Hey, good morning. Welcome. I want to submit to you that life can get a lot easier when we allow the Bible to tell us the story and illuminate to us that the devil is not a bug or a glitch in God's software. It's not outside of God's will, but rather the devil is a key player in humans' development. It's a key role in the plans and purposes of God. And if we start having that perspective, it can give us a lot of peace. So today I'm going to go through some passages in the Bible, creation story, the Gospels, and then the letters of Paul. They're going to help bring this to life. And I want to start out with Isaiah 45:7, where God sets the record straight. And he says, I form light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And that's certainly consistent with what we see in Genesis 1 and the order with which God created the universe, the pattern that he established and then passed on to mankind. The very first thing that God created before anything else, it says, was this wild, deep, dark abyss. Remember, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and at that point, the earth was formless and void, and darkness hovered over the deep. And what did he do next? He put humans inside this wild and immature sort of parts of creation to finish the job. We know that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 says that there were no crops in the garden yet because there was no man to till the ground. We know that nothing was named yet, and we know that nothing was subdued. And what did he put in this garden? Did he put something to help mankind accomplish this purpose? Not really. Certainly not in the short run. He put a creature, the devil, that was more wise, that was more cunning, that was more experienced than mankind. And then he took a step back, wanting to reveal the point with which his creation was at. Now we know when humans failed that this theme was consistent. Did God make it easier on them? No, he didn't. He cursed the ground so it wouldn't produce as much. He limited the time with which they had to fulfill these resources, these limited resources that he had. He created asymmetry in their relationships. He turned up the volume and the tension and the difficulty. Paul describes this in Romans 8:20 through 22, where he says that creation was subject to this futility, but God did so in hope. Well, what was that hope? Well, the prophecy that God gave us in Genesis 3 reveals this, that one day an iteration, a future model of a generation of this woman, a seed of this woman, would actually reach the point of maturity to, even in the context of these difficult situations and in the advocate for the other side, that would actually bring out the best in the human, and the human would overcome the devil and the snake and crush him. Now, I want to tell you a story about how Jesus accomplished this, but it's going to be done in a little different context than maybe you've heard before. So after Jesus was baptized and he received the Holy Spirit, right before he began his ministry, we know that he was led out into the wilderness. But I want us to consider that a lot of our key assumptions about that story are actually robbing the story's power. I think it's a mere circumstance in preparation and sort of in support of the experience that Jesus would ultimately have on the cross. In what context would it actually make sense that the devil himself would feel that he could be successful in tempting God coming down to earth as a human, in tempting Jesus? So we got Jesus led out into the wilderness by the Holy Spirit. All he had was the Holy Spirit, who would bear witness to his spirit, the word of the Lord, what he had learned, what he had been taught his whole life. And he was sitting there, and day after day, not knowing when he would be getting out of the wilderness, but just told to remain there until the Holy Spirit would give him relief. And day after day and night after night, there was no relief. There was nobody that would come and support him. There was no food. He began to starve to death. He maybe even began to hallucinate or began to see things. He was at his weakest moment, his weakest point. I'm sure his flesh had thoughts of, am I really who God said I am? Is this really happening? Am I crazy? Is God going to help me? Is God going to support me? Is this all for naught? And that was the context. My God, why had you forsaken me? Where are you? That the devil felt like he could come in and begin to say, I can fulfill these promises that led you out here, that God gave you. I can fulfill those because God is not coming. And all that Jesus had to rely on was the word of the Lord, the same thing that we have in the Holy Spirit, which teaches us and bring that to remembrance. That he wasn't equipped with any kind of supernatural powers in that moment that would allow him to escape, because we as humans are not equipped with those supernatural powers to allow us to escape. We are to rely on our knowledge and fear of the Lord and trust that it will be enough. And as the devil began to tempt Jesus, he would recall those scriptures and use them as his form of power and resistance. And once the devil knew that there was no weakness in Jesus to draw out, at that point in time, he ran away. And it says the angels came and tended to Jesus. They supported him. They strengthened him. And then from then on, there was an announcement and a spectacle made to all the principalities and powers of darkness that they would have to deal with Jesus, and it wasn't going to go well for them. I'm sure this circumstance and story was inspiring to the disciples and to everyone around him. Now, if we move on to the letters of Paul, this can be made even more clear, where in Ephesians 3, it says that there were mysteries about how creation worked and about how and who God was that had been kept hidden, that were ultimately brought to bear and first catalyzed by the story of Jesus, but that wouldn't be made known in their fullness until humanity could actually manifest them and show all of the principalities and powers of darkness in this realm and in the spiritual realm the fullness of the wisdom and in the ways of the Lord. But how do we do that? Well, just like we saw Jesus, right? That Romans 8 tells us that the Spirit would bear witness, would reveal to our spirit that we are just like Jesus, that we are sons and heirs of the promises of Jesus. But in order to be glorified with him, we must suffer with him. So we must see the devil as an important player in light of who God is and in light of our own human purpose, that we are going to be put, just like Adam and Eve and just like Jesus, in a wild and unknown area with darkness and with our knowledge of the light through the Holy Spirit. And then God is going to step away for a time and allow that to be revealed, either allowing the devil through a form of spiritual natural selection to draw out that weakness in our life, or for us to rely on our knowledge and fear of the Lord and say, this is who God is, and make a spectacle to all the principalities and powers of darkness on what the manifold wisdom of God is and what the key to life is. And that any suffering that we go through in the flesh is not from the devil. In fact, the devil doesn't want us to suffer in the flesh. The devil wants us to escape that suffering in the flesh because he knows that that is the key to us ultimately partnering with the Lord and bringing to pass his glory and inviting it into the earth. God doesn't want this to be a mystery in your life anymore. There's going to be moments and times throughout your life and throughout history where there's going to appear to be gross darkness covering the earth and gross darkness invading your life. And you're going to look around and it's going to feel like it's a wilderness. It's going to feel like almost deliberately you cannot understand or sense the presence of God. And that all you have is the still small voice, the Holy Spirit, who's just reminding you and bearing witness to you the word of the Lord, and that you have to rely in faith on the knowledge and the awareness of what God has done in your life in the past and what he says in his word. And you may even feel a greater heightened sense and awareness of the presence of temptation or the enemy. And you may experience suffering in the flesh. All of this is in God's pattern. And you can think back to how Jesus handled it versus how Adam and Eve handled it. And think back to the letters of Paul and his admonitions and say, this is normal. This is a part of something. This is not only training me, but this is actually meant to reveal the manifold wisdom of God to both this realm and the spiritual realm. And something special is happening. And that if I can rely on the word of the Lord in faith, and not allow the devil to convince me that I need to exit the suffering that I'm feeling, and trust that the Lord is coming to do a special work as soon as he's done showing me off and what he's done in my life. Guys, if you believe that the Lord has spoken to you through this video, I want to encourage you to look at the book, Why is the Devil in My Garden by Pastor Lauren Covarrubias. He's my spiritual father, he's my mentor, and he's the head pastor of my church, Mount Zion in Clarkston, Michigan. He's written several books over the last 10 years that the Lord has laid upon his heart to get certain key messages like this out to our generation so that the church can move forward to its ultimate place of maturity. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at mountzion.org. And we're going to be making several videos that flesh out some of the key concepts of the book, some in more detail, some in maybe more life application. And this is meant to be a companion or potentially a support system for you as you read these books so you don't have to do it alone. You guys have a great day. I'm praying for you. I hope you're praying for me, and I'll see you next time.